Good morning.
Good morning.
Been fighting some congestion
Being alone.
this week, and with the drugs I'm taking, it just kind of drains me, so pardon. February 28th, who's put that on your calendar? All right, February 28th. What's going on? The card fellowship party at the Dabneys. Ed, I think this is a great connection for your lesson today on friendship.
Amen.
And the point that I want to make about that is as important as our time of fellowship is in this building, I think our time together outside the building is so important as well. And so that's really what's behind this, an opportunity for us to get together, just to have some fellowship, play hearts, have some fun. If you don't know how to play hearts, I even brought the rules here today. It's an easy game to learn. I'm going to get in trouble when I say this, but I'm going to say it anyways, just because it's true. If Kathy can learn to play it, and she plays fairly well. She really does. But we've been playing a long time. Anybody can learn to play it. So a couple of details. We're going to start. It's a Saturday at 4 o'clock, so it doesn't get too late into the evening for us, because we do have church the next day, and we expect you to be on time for that. Leave the kids at home and bring a snack to share. I'm going to be making chili, so prepare for that.
How old was the kid?
You'll just have to figure that out. Again, we're playing hearts. It's easy to learn. And do you have a card table and some chairs that we might be able to borrow? Let us know. And of course, let Russ and Vicki know that you're coming so we can know how many tables we need to plan to set up and those kinds of things. So if you have any questions about that, holler at us or at the Dabney. So should be a lot of fun. Should be a lot of fun. I'm looking for a lot of inexperienced heart players so that I can dominate. I'll just be honest about that. That's the great thing about hearts. It's easy enough to learn, but for those of you who really have that desire for the game to be more. Let me just say that way. For those of you who take card playing seriously, this is a good game for that. It's a good mix of that. So looking forward to that. Today, yeah, I see what you mean there, Russ. Standing without falling is what we're going to be talking about today. And there's a couple of verses that I came across. One in particular, and I'll share why, that kind of directed me or guided me, if you will, to our lesson today. But beginning in 1 Corinthians 10:12, it says, "Therefore let anyone who thinks that he stands take heed lest he fall." I always thought that would be a great sign to put out on the front door when it's icy and slick out during the winter, Take heed lest you fall, just be careful kind of thing. Which I think is part of the message behind it. But also from 1 Corinthians chapter 16, verse 13, a very familiar passage, it says, be watchful, stand firm in the faith, and act like men. Be strong. Now, I put that word quit there for a particular reason. How many of you, anybody going to have the King James Version with them, or an older version? Well, let me show you. In the King James Version, this is how that passage reads. Again, I'm in 1 Corinthians 16, verse 13, and it says, "Watch ye, stand fast in the faith, quit you like men, be strong." Now, this is the first Bible I ever bought. And I got to be honest, it's a King James Version, obviously, from what I just told you. And I thought, I've read that passage, how many times? And as it says, quit you like men. What do you think that means? I mean, you know what the word quit means, right? Quit means you stop doing whatever it is you're doing. And so is that what it's saying here? Is that what Paul is saying? Quit you like men? Quit acting like men? Well, that doesn't make sense, I don't think, unless, I can imagine, I probably tried to figure out what it meant. It's like, quit you like men. it's like, okay, be a man and quit sinning kind of thing. And actually, that's exactly what the text means. But this is one of those examples of why it's important to stay on top of your translations and understand your translations. Out of 66 English translations, and I get that from the Bible Gateway app that I've talked to you about. And it's a great tool. So I could look at this verse in 66 different translations, and 6 of those translations sound just like the King James Version, quit. Well, as I dug into that, because I was curious about it, of course, that's Old English. So back in, 17th century, 16th century, the word quit literally meant courageous. It meant to be, so when it says quit like men, it says it's literally saying be courageous. And, that's one of the things with language. It changes over time. And there's another example of that. So if you're working in an older translation and you're reading that word quit, in this context, it literally means courageous, to be strong. Also, too, in these translations that we see, especially here in chapter 16 and verse 13, act like men. Okay, be courageous and strong. That's what it's saying. I want you to understand this too from the translation, is it's not about gender here. It's not about gender. So ladies, you're not off the hook. It's talking to you too. And it's very biblical that when we're talking about strength and courage, that it's done in a masculine language. It doesn't eliminate you, ladies, from it. It's encouraging you to be strong and courageous as well. And so going on from there, little side note. So on one hand, we are called to stand firm as we look at these 2 verses. And that's what we're going to do. We're just looking at how these 2 verses relate today and the message that we can get it. So on one hand, it's talking about standing firm. On the other hand, we are warned that standing still can lead to a fall. So it kind of sounds a little bit like a contradiction. It's saying over here, stand, and over here, be careful not to stand, kind of thing. And that's not really what it's saying like, and that's why we got to jump into it here. What Paul is doing is he's giving us both a warning and a command in these 2 verses. And the warning is, take heed lest you fall. Take heed lest you fall. It's not telling you not to take a stand. It's telling you, honestly, how to take a stand. And the next piece is that advice too, standing fast in the faith. Spiritual maturity is learning how to do both of these at the same time. So let's look a little more closely at what 10:12 says in 1 Corinthians. Again, therefore, let anyone who thinks that he stands take heed lest he fall. Paul is not warning the weak here. He's warning the overconfident. The overconfident. It's kind of that idea that, yeah, you think things are going okay. You think you got it all together. You think you're in line with God. You think you got the right relationship going on with the Lord. Be careful lest you fall. You might just be wrong about some of the things that you're assuming. And that's what Paul's talking about here. Be careful about that. Because if you're not, the bottom could fall out on you before you ever realize it, before you could do anything about it. So again, it's about being overconfident. The danger is not standing. The danger is thinking that you're standing. And this is really a posture of self-reliance, if you will, or being overconfident. And let's be honest, we all deal with that from time to time, don't we? And maybe it comes from, the posture, this idea of thinking, well, I've been saved a long time. I've been a Christian a long time. And what's that statement really saying? I got it all figured out, right? I got it all figured out. And as soon as you take that kind of attitude that you've got it all figured out, Paul's going to say, you're going to fall. And you're going to fall hard, okay? So again, thinking about that. Yeah, I know what the Bible says. Again, it's this, I got this. You kind of hear the arrogance in there a little bit. That arrogance, I've been at this a long time. I got it all figured out. I'm good on this. I'm good on this. Or that attitude, like the prayer that we were talking about last week, as the Pharisee and the tax collector are standing together. And the tax collector is just, he's weeping. His heart is broken. And it's like, dear God, help me. Help me, a sinner. Where the Pharisee's looking down his nose at this guy, saying to God, thank you, Lord, for not making me like this miserable guy. Thank you for that. See, that's somebody, that's a perfect example of somebody who thinks they're standing on firm ground. And Paul's just giving them a warning. Boy, the bottom's gonna come fast for you with that kind of thinking. Where the other guy, in the text we're told, went on blessed because of how he humbled himself before the Lord, realizing exactly what he needed, realizing, yeah, this could happen to me. In fact, it did happen to me. And realizing God is the only way through that to get to the other side. You see, the problem is spiritual pride creates blind spots. Spiritual pride creates blind spots. When we stop watching ourselves, I've talked about this a couple of times, that pause. And what are you supposed to do during that pause? Reflect. To ask yourself, one last opportunity. Okay, am I thinking right about this? Am I feeling right about this? Am I acting right about this? Because the reality is, most of the time when we take that moment to pause and assess the situation, we're usually pretty capable of being accurate. We're usually pretty capable of concluding that, whoa, I was just about to make a major mistake. And so, you adjust, you fix it, and you avoid the problem, okay? And you avoid the problem. You make a better decision, whatever the circumstances might be. But when you're unwilling to take that pause, when you're unwilling to make that assessment, when you're unwilling to judge yourself, because you think you just got it all figured out anyways, little things happen that kind of take us off course. And quite frequently, we're not aware of it. Remember that rope thing? I had Dave up here, and who else? Gilbert, I think. I had Ed up here. It's that idea where the ropes are close together. We're in line. Things are pretty good. But something happens, and we're just a little farther away. But we don't realize it. We don't feel it. Okay? But again, something else happens, and again, we're a little farther away. And then something else, and a little farther away. And then something. And by the time you realize it, you can be so lost. Guys, we kind of have this reputation, we're lost, right? And what won't we do? Stop and ask for directions, right? Because we're fairly certain if we keep driving long enough, if we drive around the world, we'll get back to where we need to be, right? That kind of thinking. But it's dangerous. It's dangerous. Most falls don't happen suddenly. They happen quietly, gradually, while no one is watching. No one perceives what's going on. But I want to remind us, when we specifically take that pause and look for a problem, we'll probably find it, and thus have an opportunity to do something about it. So one of the assessing questions that this lesson asks us today is, are you drifting? Are there some things going on in your life that are knocking you out of line? And in your honesty with that assessment, you'll be able to figure out, okay, this is what I need to do about that. As I was thinking about this, it reminded me when I was a prison chaplain. And I've talked about this before. It's been a long time. You might not remember it, so let me remind you what this is all about. One of the trainings and part of my orientation to being a chaplain in a prison was to learn how not to be a duck. Now, a duck is a term that inmates use for staff they think they can take advantage of, or they know they can take advantage of. Staff or inmates, not all inmates. I have to say this. I met some wonderful people that were inmates when I was a prison chaplain. People that I stayed in contact for decades after that job was long gone. But I tell you what, too, I met some people that I don't ever want to see again as well. Quite an extreme there. And the one thing about an inmate doing time in prison is they have a lot of time. They got a lot of time. And they're looking for ways to occupy that time. Now, the analogy here that I'm making, and I want to be clear about this, I'm using this scenario, this prison scenario, to describe for us how Satan works. Exactly how Satan works. Does that mean I'm calling these inmates Satan? No, I'm not. Although some of them that title fit. It did. It just did. What I'm saying is these inmates have a lot of time on their hands. And so they'll just do little things, just a little nudge to see if Chaplain Rudy is a duck. Whoa, what might that look like? Well, one of the things that I provided in chapel, every Sunday we had communion service. And for Bible study, I'd have a big pot of coffee going. So those who came for Bible study, we'd have coffee, and I'd have sugar cubes set out. And I had to be really careful that my sugar cubes and my grape juice weren't being stolen. You know why? Making hooch. Making hooch. And again, it wasn't necessarily that, they're making hooch because they wanted to get drunk. I mean, that was certainly part of it. Sometimes it was just having something to do. And so you might come up to Chaplain Rudy and say, "Hey, Rudy, you mind if I take some of these sugar cubes so I can have them for my coffee back in my unit, in the day room? We never have any sugar there." Well, I knew better than that, because that became contraband then. But here's the thing is, if I say, "Yeah, sure, go ahead, take 4 or 5 sugar cubes, that'll be fine," I just gave him a little message that, Chaplain Rudy is willing to bend the rules a little bit. He shows potential. So then the next question might be a little bigger. They just, over time, they just kind of slowly push you until they get you to a point where they can just take advantage of you. There's a lot of drugs that come into our prisons. And you know how a lot of those drugs get into prison? Staff who have been compromised, who have become ducks. And I share all that in great detail simply to make this point. That's exactly what Satan is doing to us. Makes little suggestions, little ideas, little things that don't feel like anything. But over time, they add up. And pretty soon, I'm Satan's duck. Living a life of sin and maybe not even aware of it. And that grooming to be a duck, whether it's in prison or out here in the world with Satan attacking us, that can go on for years, quite honestly. And remember, as an inmate, they had the time. They had the time. And so far, until Jesus returns, Satan has that time too, to work on you. So again, in asking that question, are you drifting? It's a pretty important question. And I hope I've made the point too that even the little things, when you stop and honestly pause and honestly assess yourself and realize, maybe it isn't just a little thing. Maybe it isn't just a little thing. And what is it, that little thing? Well, it could be 148,000 different things. And you're going to have to figure that out for yourself. But if you're not even taking the time to honestly assess yourself, to see if you are indeed standing firmly on what you should be standing on, you don't even have a chance. You don't even have a chance. Much like the Patriots this afternoon. 1 Corinthians 16:13 on the other side, be watchful. Stand firm in the faith. Act like men. Be strong. See, Paul says stand fast. He said, before he says that, he says watch. Why? Well, because standing firm requires awareness. And really isn't that what I've been talking about so far this whole lesson, about being aware. But Paul's adding his list too of some things that we need to be aware of when he says be watchful. We need to watch that our heart, our thoughts, our habits, our affections, our relationships, etc., 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 are indeed holy. God approved. My definition of the word holy, God approved in this context. Are those things that we connect ourselves to, those people we connect ourselves to, that way of thinking, that mindset that we allow ourselves to have. Is it holy? Is it God approved? I often think about it this way too. Am I maintaining a temple that God is willing to be a part of through his Spirit? It's just another perspective that helps me to be maybe more critical when I assess myself. Okay? We are not told to stand fast in our strength, in our experience, and in our own reputation. But often that's exactly where we take that stand. And those aren't the things that Paul is encouraging us to stand on, because those aren't the things that God is going to bless. He's pretty specific here. Stand fast, firm in the faith. The faith, the truth of Christ, the gospel, the promise of God. This kind of standing is not passive. It's active resistance. And I want you to think about that for a little bit. Taking a stand isn't just a posture that you assume, but taking a stand requires some work. And maybe that's the way to look at this. Taking a stand requires standing against false teaching. So think about that. What's that look like? Assessment time again. You know, if these are the things if you're taking a stand in the faith, are these things real in your life? And if they are, what do they look like? What do they sound like? What do other people see and hear? Because you're taking a stand against false teaching. Because you're taking a stand against temptation. And finally, against the pressure to compromise, to give that little bit. Again, that question is, are you drifting? And if these aren't things that describe you, taking a stand against false teaching, taking a stand against temptation, taking a stand against the pressures of the world to be anything but godly, we got a problem, right? Think about it this way. You're fishing on a river. Do I have your attention, Dave? You're fishing on a river, and you found the honey spot. You found the hole, and they're hitting good today. But the current, even a slow-moving river, that boat's just going to drift right on by, isn't it? So what do you got to do? Got to pull out your anchor, right? Got to pull out your anchor. And you have to stand fast, okay? You got to stand fast to stay on that hole or near enough that you can cast to that hole to have some luck at fishing, right? You don't stand fast by accident. You stand fast by anchoring yourself to the truth, to God's truth. But the idea here is if you're not anchored to it, if you're not securely holding on to it, what's going to happen? It's another example of the drifting. It's just going to drift away. It's just going to drift away, and you're going to miss out on it. You're going to miss out on it. Biblical courage is not loud confidence. It's quiet resolve. It's quiet resolve. Resolving to, I will obey even when it's hard. That's a hard one, isn't it? I will obey even when it's hard. And usually the hard part is because it's requiring maybe to give something up. Maybe something you've enjoyed a long, long time. But you got to give it up. To resolve, I will stand even when I feel weak. I will trust God, not myself. I think as a Christian, there's just certain things that we just need to be unmovable about, for lack of a better way to say it. Certain things that we're known for. And again, here's that assessment question. What do people know you for? Do they know you to be obedient in the face of challenges and challenges to that obedience, or maybe hardship it could create? How many of us had dynamic changes in our relationships when we became Christians? Ed talked a lot about that today. Certainly true in my life. There were some hard choices I had to make about who I continued to stay in contact with and who I didn't. And the list for me of friend qualities changed dramatically when I became a child of God. Thank goodness, because the friends that I have now are much higher quality. They're not good golfers, but they're good quality people. 1 Corinthians 16:13, act like men. Be strong. Be strong. And it takes a lot of strength to obey when it's hard. It takes a lot of strength to be strong when you feel weak. Don't trust in your strength. Trust in God's strength to get through that. So notice the balance here that we get from these two texts as Paul writes to the Corinthians in this first letter. This idea of take heed. It's really about humility. Being humble and be strong. About having courage. About having courage. God does not call us to a fragile faith, but he also does not bless a proud faith. In other words, a self-reliant position, if you will, on godly things. The balance of the Christian life. Put the two verses together and you get the full picture. Humility without being a coward. Okay? And I think what that statement really means is sometimes fear causes us to become shy. That's not humility. That's fear. That's fear. That's not humility. Humility, a person who is truly characterized by this godly humility that Paul's talking about, is a person who still reflects strength, God's purpose, God's direction. Strength without arrogance, confidence in God and not self. So we stand carefully, we stand courageously. The believer who stands the longest is the one who never forgets how easily they could fall, especially outside of grace. And I think that's the one thing too, or one of the many things, maybe I should say it this way, that just drives us to our knees to thank God for a faith like that. A faith that allows us to be humble, appreciative, but strong and confident as well. God must be the one in control, okay? I think that's certainly an underlying message too from those two verses. So let me wrap this up with a little grandfather advice. A grandfather once said, "You relax on a plane never having met the pilot." Think about that a moment. You relax. Now, maybe you don't. But the idea is, you get on a plane, you get comfortable, you go on your journey, and you don't worry about it. Same kind of thing. You relax on a ship, never having met the captain. You relax on a bus, even though the bus driver is a stranger to you. So, why panic, stress, and worry through life when God is in control? The reality of grandfather's advice here is, the bottom line is, and the last question you need to ask yourself this morning, is God in control? Because if you're experiencing, stress, anxiety, worry, it's a pretty good indicator God's not in control. Now you know what you need to do. You need to put God in control. Through obedience, through practice, through understanding of His Word, through obedience to His gospel. I don't know where you're at, but if you realize God's not in control, how can we help you today put God in control? And maybe it's the first time, or maybe what we need to think about is putting God back in control. You realize you've drifted too far away. How can we help you today? Please come and let us know while together we stand and sing this song of encouragement.